Yo, what is up, fam? It's your boy Legend, and I'm back with another video. You already know what this is just by looking at the thumbnail. Now, if you guys enjoy the content, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe while you're at it. Also, I got a little poll coming up on a community tab in a little bit. So, for those who want to help me out, um, with basically the ship of a current what if, I'm gonna need you to answer on the poll because I'm stuck in between a rock and a hard place, basically. But without further ado, let's get into this intro so we can start this what if. In Kumo, the Raikage was currently looking out of the window thinking, not a single one of his shinobi has returned, both from Konoha and Kiri. He already knew they were dead. It pissed him off because he was acting out of greed, trying to get information in enemy territory. He felt dumb. He sent a small portion of shinobi into the strongest shinobi village. It wasn't that big of a loss, but still, some of those shinobi were a part of the Kinkaku squad. Meanwhile, with Orochimaru, he just got settled into another base with Kabuto and Mondis. Orochimaru was still working on his seals for keeping out Zetsu when Mondis snapped her eyes open as she looked towards the exit of the hideout. The two of them then moved towards the exit as they took a peek from the door that led to the surface of a clearing they were in, and Orochimaru saw them. He wasn't one that would forget a face, and the face that he saw was one that would cause problems for him. Naruto Uzumaki. Orochimaru wanted the boy off of the face of the earth, but he wouldn't act now. Not after what he had just heard. He was going to have Mondis tell them and set up an ambush for when they were returning, and he would take the scrolls of the Fuinjutsu from him for himself. With that, Mondis blurred out of sight as she trailed them from a distance, but her presence didn't go unnoticed. Hinata had her Byakugan active, and she saw that they were being followed. She informed Naruto, but he made them quicken the pace. He wouldn't start anything unless it was needed for their survival, and as of now, she's done nothing to pose a threat. Mondis followed them all the way to the border before she stopped and backtracked to set up her ambush for when they came back. Hinata sighed in relief. She was no longer following them. The four of them crossed the bridge that led to Wave Country as they made their way through the now better looking town within an hour. They were in a secluded part of said country now, mainly because of the violent waters that they stood in front of. The waters looked as though it would rise up and swallow all of them, but this was only the beginning of the brutal tide. If they were to go 45 miles out, that is where they would run into the real danger. That is where Naruto was most important. He would be the only one that could get through the brutal tides of the whirlpools alive. With that, the four of them set off in a boat that was docked. They had to bribe the owner to borrow it without him tagging along. In all honesty, it didn't matter if the owner of the boat came or not. If he did, Naruto would just kill the man. He wouldn't risk letting someone who showed no purpose getting their hands on any Uzumaki possession, just to sell them and cause irreversible damage. In total, it took Naruto and his team to get to Wave to the land of eddies in a total of 9 hours. Meanwhile, back in Konoha, Anko was standing in front of Danzo as he sat behind his desk. She didn't know why she was called here. There were no missions worth sending her on, so why was she here? What's on your mind, Anko? Anko blinked as Danzo finally spoke. She only had two things on her mind, and that was Naruto and the war. Anko knew that she wouldn't be able to lie to Danzo after all. He taught people how to lie as part of his personal training to others. So she came clean. Danzo didn't show any reaction, and it made Anko nervous until he finally spoke. I see. You have genuine feeling for the boy, but he doesn't reciprocate them. I'm not at all surprised, but it has nothing to do with you, Anko. It's because of Orochimaru. Anko shivered hearing the name. The things that he did to her were inhumane. Naruto's goal in life was changed at an early age. Before he wanted to be the best shinobi he could be and serve under his grandfather figure Sarutobi. But when Orochimaru killed him, it changed Naruto. His goal is to now kill everything that links itself to Orochimaru and the snake himself. It's not your fault, Anko, but Naruto will come around. I know him, I trained him. When he does come around and open up to you, the bond will be unbreakable. Everyone that an Uzumaki cares for is family, and they will do anything to keep those bonds. Back with Naruto. Him and his team stopped off at the boat and onto the ruins of his ancestors' home. The place was in shambles. There were still buildings that stood, but they were fragile. The four walked through the streets in silence, with Naruto stopping every so often to observe something left by a fellow clan member. Eventually, they all made their way to an underground tunnel that led to a solid wall. Naruto then blacked out upon reaching the wall, and when he came to, he and his team were on the opposite side of the wall. What happened? Naruto looked around, confused and on edge. Your eyes turned a somewhat grayish purple color, and you seemed like you were in a trance. We called out to you, but you gave no response, and then you placed your hand on the wall as the room lit up with chakra, causing the wall to open. Ino explained. Naruto nodded. This would explain why Sakura was supporting his weight as they walked. His reserves were sapped from him, and now it was only at a quarter of the way full. They all then stopped. They looked around the room they had just stepped into. There was nothing but bodies. Not bodies, they were skeletons. And the floor underneath them were stained with all the decayed flesh of men, women, children, family, pets. One body that caught Naruto's attention was one in the corner. It was a pregnant woman, based on the unnatural bend of the spine and the lower ribs, along with the fetus-sized skeleton that rested atop of the woman's pelvis. She had a stained letter in her hand. Naruto took the letter and began reading. The hard-to-read print, and when he was done, it fell from his hands as he shook. He was angry as he clenched his fist and drew blood. As the air around them became suffocating, a tear finally fell from his eyes as he exhaled. That was his grandmother, and she was writing to his mother, wanting to let her know that their home had fallen due to the stone and Kumo, and that the leaf did nothing at all to assist an ally when they knew what was going on. Naruto calmed himself. He had better things to do right now, but when he gets back to the village, he will talk to Danzo. Meanwhile, Danzo looked at the two figures that stood at his desk. He wasn't falling for the bullshit that they were trying to pull. He already knew them thanks to Jiraiya. It didn't matter if they changed their outfits or what. The two figures wore all black leather coats with black Anbu pants. I'm not stupid. I know exactly who you are. Before he said anything else, he quickly did a one-handed hand sign as he spewed out a turn of wind while throwing shuriken into it. Toby activated his Sharingan as he phased through the door, but Deidara, he wasn't lucky at all. He sat against the far wall of the office with blood coming from above his left eye, cloak torn and covered with dust. He was chewing something as Danzo walked up to him. He now had one arm. Blood leaked from the missing appendage and pooled around him as he slowly lifted his head, hearing the fast approaching footfalls. Datara threw forth his only hand as 3 spiders came from his palm and latched on to Danzo, who quickly tossed aside his Haori before it exploded. Datara swallowed the clay that he was chewing as the bleeding on his missing appendage stopped as it slowly started to grow back an arm. He stood and looked around the smoke-filled office as the doors burst open, but then he was sucked away as Toby came back, his voice deep this time. "You're smarter than we thought, Lord Fifth. You knew who we were, and yet you still allowed us into your village. May I ask why?" Danzo said nothing as he glared at the masked man. Toby then disappeared in the swirling vortex, back with Naruto. He and his team had their pouches full of sealing scrolls from Uzu and were now back on the boat headed back to Wave. They were moving at a fast pace once they got to Wave Country, and they quickly left, going back to Konoha. Once they crossed out of Wave Country, they slowed their pace a bit just so they could rest. They walked for about an hour, but Naruto felt like something was off. He didn't forget that they were followed when traveling to Wave, so he just felt uneasy. He turned to Hinata and nodded as she activated her Byakugan and scanned the area, but she saw nothing. Meanwhile, 2 miles away, ahead of Naruto and his group, Mondis stood in a tree next to Orochimaru. She turned to him and nodded as Orochimaru turned to mud and Mondis jumped off. Meanwhile, Orochimaru went through hand signs and closed his eyes and hands together. As his eyes glazed over, he was now looking through the eyes of Mondis, watching her every move as she quickly and silently approached the nervous sleep ninja. Back with Naruto, he came to a stop. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. There was usually the sound of animals when you walk through the forest, but all he heard was wind. Something was definitely wrong, but maybe he was just being paranoid. He then blinked, and when he opened his eyes, he saw a black-haired woman in front of Hinata. Hinata didn't even realize what was happening until it happened. She looked down and saw a cut, an inch thick, going from the bottom of her stomach to just under her left breast. She dropped to the ground, feeling the poison take effect as immense pain raced through her body as she choked on her own sobs as tears filled her eyes. She was in so much pain that it was impossible for her to even scream. It felt like all of her nerves were dropped into acid as she stared into the blue sky, paralyzed from the pain. Naruto only saw Hinata fall. All he could say was, "Fast." But he had to move. This woman had turned her attention to Ino, and she moved off. Mondis was now in front of Ino as she went to drive her lance-morphed hand through Ino, but Naruto met her before impact as he caught the strange appendage and pushed her away. Ino went wide-eyed. She didn't even know what was happening until she saw Naruto. Naruto held an iron grip onto the lance with poison as his sky blue eyes drilled into her royal blue eyes that were uncaring. Naruto kicked her away as she slid back. Naruto couldn't place it, but something about her was familiar. She felt like so many people, one being Orochimaru. Ino, Sakura, take Hinata and go. Mondis raised her finger at Naruto. They won't be going anywhere. You will all die here. Orders from my master. Naruto then heard a scream as he came back. Mondis wasn't in front of him. He turned to see her with her second sword-morphed hand through Sakura's stomach. She then moved off, outpacing Naruto as she planted her foot onto Ino's stomach and ran her sword through her chest as her eyes widened. None of them could even scream. The poison and pain prevented it, and all they could do was look on and just cry. In a hideout, Orochimaru smiled. She was handling things like they were nothing. Back with Naruto, he grit his teeth. She placed him under a genjutsu and moved around him, removing his teammates. Naruto had to use all of his speed, all he had. He had to go all out. If he didn't, he was sure he would not come out of this alive. Naruto moved off top speed, looking like a blur, but to her, he was slow. But she didn't bother moving. Naruto slammed a fist into her, but it had little effect, as she only slid back a few feet. The two stared at each other before moving. Naruto had to dodge more since she had more reach, but he finally saw an opening. He ducked under a stab and held out his hand as a Rasengan formed. He slammed it into her, but she faded away. Naruto felt immense burning sensation on his shoulder and flared his chakra, breaking the genjutsu. Seeing a gash on his shoulder, she placed that genjutsu when he hit her. Naruto noticed the wound healing slower, but he couldn't dwell on it. He had to stop holding back. His eyes turned red and slitted as his whiskers got more defined and his hair became spiky. I see. You're a Jinchuriki. The pain you feel will be a lot worse than theirs, since my poison was made to put down Bijus. Naruto paid no attention to what she said as he moved off. He was now in front of her. He had to jump away as her body became surrounded by dense lightning, and then she disappeared. Mondis looked at Naruto. It's slowly starting to take effect. Pretty soon, you will end up like them. Naruto said nothing as he exploded with red chakra, with two tails swinging behind him. He dropped to all fours and blitzed Mondis. He slammed into her, landing on top of her. He raised a fist and slammed it down. Mondis tilted her head as Naruto grazed her cheek, cutting it. She kicked him off as she stood. Black markings then came around her body in a flame pattern. The trees around her then started to wilt and die as green markings started to come around her eyes. Another tail came from behind Naruto as the ground started to crack underneath him. Naruto moved off and was in front of her, but to her, he was slow. She moved aside and plunged a sword through his arm, but he let out a roar that blew her away. Naruto noticed that his arm went limp and it was burning. It felt like it was corroding from the inside out. Mondis rushed forward, seeing Naruto down, as she was going to end him here and now, but Naruto shoved his hand through her stomach. But nothing. No, she was hollow. She was almost pasty on the inside. Naruto then coughed. He looked down to see her lance through his stomach. He collapsed back. Her wound started to heal. Mondis powered down and started to walk away, leaving them on the ground, taking one of the pouches. Naruto's wound slowly healed and closed. He could feel it. The poison was strong. It was made to take down a Biju. This was his end. He was going to die. The burning of his body was intense and didn't hurt to even twitch. He looked over and saw his team: Sakura, Hinata, Ino. Naruto forced himself to stand. His breath was hollow, lungs burning, bones fragile, legs weak. Naruto then vomited, and it came up black, obviously from the poison killing him from the inside out. It was only this bad for him because he was a Jinchuriki. He was only standing because of his willpower. He tried to pick up Ino, but was too weak. He then formed a hand sign to make a clone. It came out pale and weak before it dispelled. His chakra was shot. He had to focus and use more chakra, making another clone. This one took all of his reserves. Go! The clone went off as Naruto pulled out a bottle of pills, something him and Tsunade made, a mix of her cells and the fox's chakra. He put a handful in his mouth and started to chew. At least it would ease their pain. but his was beyond easy. He got the pills into a paste. As he fell next to Sakura, who was still conscious along with Ino and Hinata, he put his mouth to hers and spit some of the substance into her mouth as she swallowed. He then moved to Hinata, placing his lips to hers, and he did the same. Now he moved to Ino. He placed his mouth on hers, and she also swallowed. Naruto stood once more. Kyuubi, now is a good time as any to help out. Bittersweet. He knew it was out of the fox's hands. Naruto now had to use all the willpower he had. Lifting Ino onto his back, he dropped to his knees. He tried to stand, but his knees buckled. Get up, damn it! Naruto yelled to himself. He finally stood, only to collapse and vomit black again before he blacked out, the taste of copper and dirt filling his mouth. But guys, I'm going to end it off right there. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe right at it. But without further ado, I'm out, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.